Hello everyone, and yes, so welcome to the Oxford MBA virtual information session. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever it is that you're dining from. It's afternoon here in Oxford. My name is Mandeep Mahal, and I'm one of the recruitment and admissions managers for the Oxford MBA. And I'm also joined by my colleague Elena Irmia, who's one of our senior advisors. And today I'm going to give you some information on the Oxford MBA. So I'm going to be speaking about the course curriculum, the wider university experience, application requirements as well. I'm aiming to speak for approximately 40 to 45 minutes, and then we will have some time for some questions. And in fact, you can go ahead and submit any questions now. So any questions that do come into mind, do use the Q&A function. In fact, I can see that some are already starting to come through. Elena will be answering those in the background, but we will also have time for some live questions as well at the end. What I would ask is please do keep your questions broad and not specific to your profile. So what I'll do is we'll start the presentation. I'm going to switch my camera off so you're not distracted by my face as we go through the slides, but then we'll be back on camera towards the end. Okay, so let's take you to Oxford. So when you think about Oxford, I think this image comes to mind. So Oxford is known as the city of dreaming spires, and I think what's really important when you're thinking about business school, when you're thinking about the Oxford MBA, it's really important to note that it's not just a business school that you're applying to. You're applying to do an MBA at a business school that is an academic department at one of the greatest universities in the world. And as an MBA student, you will become a member of a college, which really adds value to your experience at Oxford. You'll get to spend some time with some students who are from all over the world, who are studying fascinating subjects. And with your college, you'll be able to join a sporting club or a society. The collegiate system is something that's really unique and certainly add valuable experience, it'll be valuable to your experience, at Oxford. And we will speak about colleges later in the presentation. You can see in terms of some of the colleges there in that image, you can see the Radcliffe Camera, which is at the forefront. Behind that is the Sheldonian Theatre, where you would matriculate and also graduate. So yes, really important that you'll be part of one of the world's greatest universities. But then in contrast, here is the business school. So you'll see that it's new. We are a new business school. So the school opened back in 2001, and we admitted our first class back in '96. So a very young business school, modern. It's conveniently located opposite the train station. So if you're traveling to London for any networking events or job interviews, very convenient. Everything that you need for your MBA will be at this building. So this is where lectures will take place. There is a library on the first floor. I'd say it's one of the most modern libraries that you'll find in Oxford. Our Careers Development Centre are based here. So you really do get the best of both worlds in terms of old and new. So a new business school, modern ways of thinking, but something that is embedded within the wider university that has its unique history and traditions. So typically in Europe, MBA programs tend to be 1 year as opposed to, I suppose, when you think about programs in the US. And there certainly are some benefits to that, which you can see on the screen. So in terms of lower costs and tuition fees, living expenses, less time away from your career. So within the 1 year program, it allows you to get back into employment without too much of a large break. It is going to be an intense year. The program is a full 12 months. So something to consider is what it is that you're hoping to get out of the program in terms of the career transition. So what is it that you're looking to get out of the MBA? So, for example, if you're someone who's looking to make a drastic change, so if you're thinking about changing your sector, your function and geography, so what is known as the triple jump, is that 1 year program going to be right for you? And we certainly have seen candidates who've been able to do that. And in fact, we'll go through some statistics of the most recent employment report that we have, which shown students have been successful. But it's just to note that it is going to be an intense year. And we're very happy to have individual conversations and discuss that further, whether if the one-year program is right for you. But then if you are considering a 2-year program, I want to just speak briefly about the Oxford 1+1 MBA, which is another program that we offer. And it's a very unique program. So it allows you to combine 2 years, so 2 separate programs. So we have partnered up with a number of different academic departments within the wider university, where it allows you to do sort of a very sort of an academic deep dive for your first year with a particular master's degree. And then in your second year, you would come and do an MBA. So it's a 2-year program, but you're actually walking away with 2 degrees, and it is 2 degrees from the University of Oxford. And there'll be 2 separate years that you would have as well. And also, if you think about in terms of thinking about the career transition that you're looking for, it's certainly a bonus to have that additional time to think about that. It can also work out less expensive than a 2-year MBA. And then also finally, I just want to speak about it comes with a great scholarship opportunity as well, the Pershing Square Scholarship, which some of you may be aware of. So as an Oxford 1+1 MBA student, you can apply for that scholarship, which is it's a very prestigious scholarship. It provides funding for both programs of study, so your partnering program and also your MBA, and it also does come with a stipend towards living expenses. So a great scholarship that you can apply for. I'm not going to focus too much about the 1+1 in this session, but if there are any questions that you do have, or I would actually encourage you to have a look at some of the pages that we have on our website. You can view some of those partnering programs that we do have available that you can look to partner up and do the 1+1 MBA. Okay, so if we spend a bit of time on this slide, and just speaking about the course curriculum in a bit more detail. So it is a 1-year program. We have 4 terms. So very traditional in Oxford, we name our terms. So we have Michaelmas for the autumn fall term, Hilary for winter, Trinity for spring, and then we just have sort of long vacation or summer for the last term. Something that's currently being worked on and is going to be new for 2024 is a pre-program. So this is it's not mandatory. It's a pre-program that will be available in August, September, and it will be virtual. And it's essentially like a boot camp where you would get access to certain materials to bring you up to speed and to better equip you for the MBA. So I'd say, for example, you can see, in fact, one of the core courses is accounting. So if you're someone who doesn't have much accounting experience, the pre-program there'll be certain materials, certain access that you'll have to get you up to speed, to sort of brush up on some of those skills. And then in Michaelmas, which is the first term, this is when you'll work on your core courses. So anything in red is a core course, and this is what you'll expect to find in any other MBA program. So it's really giving you those fundamentals of business. So you've got subjects such as accounting, you've got your marketing, your organizational behavior. So you'll work on those during Michaelmas term, and then also you'll finish the last 2 of those core courses in Hilary. But then as you get into Hilary, this is when you can start personalizing your MBA towards you. And you can do that through elective modules. We have a wide range of elective modules available. And in fact, I believe the next slide will just give some examples of some of the electives that are available. There are also some international electives as well. So if you're looking to get some further sort of international experience, we currently have, there is an elective doing business in Africa, which is in Cape Town, where you'll be doing a lot of company visits, meeting potential sort of businesses, CEOs, learning how a business is conducted on the continent. So that is an elective that we currently have on offer. We also have another elective, which I suppose we can't really I don't know how we get around calling it international. I suppose the fact that it is away from Oxford, but it is an elective in London. It's a fintech elective, which is actually quite popular among students. And then I know the program team are working on a couple of other international electives as well. So that is something that may be applicable to you, that may be of interest. And in Trinity, you'll carry on working on those electives. And then as you get into the final term, you have some more options available to you. One of those is to do some further elective modules. So, and actually, I'd say this is actually a popular choice among students. I would say that a number of students do want to take advantage of that theoretical learning that they are exposed to at Oxford, and they want to do some more electives. The other option is to do a strategic consulting project, and that's actually quite a niche opportunity where you would work with a group of students, and you're essentially becoming the consultants for a particular client or organization. So it's a great way to get some real hands-on consulting experience. And then the other option would be to do an internship. So you still have that internship opportunity within a one-year program. It is a shorter duration, and but if you are someone who's looking to make a pivot in your career, then you can work quite closely with our Careers Development Centre in securing an internship. With it being for credit, you do need to write up a piece towards the end of your internship in terms of what it is that you've learned. I just want to make a few points about the program. So there are some changes that are being made for the program that will be starting in 2024. So for those of you who've dialed in, if you've done your research, if you've been thinking about an MBA for some time, you may have noticed that there are a couple of projects that haven't been included on this slide. So one of those is the GO2 project, which stands for Global Opportunities Threats Oxford, which is looking at a world scale problem and how you could look to solve that. So it's a very sort of practical, hands-on project where and the theme changes each year, so it's relevant to what's happening in today's society. That is still available as part of the program. It's actually being moved into an elective format. So should you still be interested in that, then you can certainly look to select that as an elective. And that's also the same for the entrepreneurship project as well. So the entrepreneurship project is also a group project where you're having to come up with an idea, a business plan, and you will present that to a panel of venture capitalists and other senior leaders. We've actually seen a number of students look to leverage the entrepreneurship project. So if you're someone who's interested in entrepreneurship, they've used the entrepreneurship project to test out a particular idea that they have. That's also still available. It is available as an elective. And then you can see at the bottom, the program is complemented by a number of different co-curricular activities. And on the screen is just a few. So we have finance labs. So that's dedicated to those who want to break into, say, investment banking, private equity. It's run by John Gilligan, who has a number of resources, a number of different so much experience within the industry. So part of the lab, you'll be working on different cases. There'll be some competitions that you'll need to compete in. He's got the right connections. John Gilligan's got the right connections that he can introduce you to. So it's a very sort of popular co-curricular. We have the consulting development program, which is for those who want to go into consulting. So that's run by the Careers Development Centre. And I understand that you can dip in and out of that program. We do have the Impact Lab that's run by the School Centre for Social Entrepreneurship. So we do have a slight focus on impact on our program. And in fact, that's really embedded throughout the course curriculum. We're really teaching you to become responsible business leaders and really think about the impact that you're going to make. And by all means, we don't expect all of our students to go into an impact-driven role. If you're someone who wants to work for a top global organization and you want to make loads of profits, loads of money, great, you can absolutely do that. If anything, we believe those decisions go hand in hand, and you can certainly look to do that, but then you can also think about the impacts that you're going to make, let's say, on your environment or on your workforce. And so the Impact Lab is something that's run by the School Centre, and is for those who are looking to go into an impact-driven career. I know they host a number of different workshops. There's like brown bag lunches. They have a network as well that they can introduce you to. And then there's the Creative Destruction Lab, which is looking at sort of science-based startups. I know it initially started with just a couple of streams, but it's actually really expanded, and also very popular co-curricular. And then we've also got the Talent Development Programme, which is something that's run by our Careers Development Centre, which is something that you can also look to dip in and out of. So I know that they would host particular sort of workshops on, let's say, negotiations or presentation skills, CV writing, mock interviews, and you can look to dip in and out of that talent development programme. So here is an example of some of the elective modules that we have available, and I'll just leave this on the screen just for a few moments. So as you can see, it's sort of a very broad range. You can see actually here in the middle, so just those two projects that I spoke about, so they are available as electives now for next year. So that's Go To and the Entrepreneurship Project. But such a wide range in terms of if you're someone who's looking to take more finance related electives, or if you're someone who's looking at leadership, entrepreneurship, a very sort of broad range of electives. Okay, so if we speak about the class, and this is statistics for our current class that just started in September. So class size was 334. I'd say class size has varied over the last few years, and we expect a class size of anything from around 330 to 340. Our programme is very diverse in terms of, and you can slice that in a number of ways, but in terms of thinking about that geographical diversity, it's certainly there. So 97% of our class is international. We have around 63 nationalities represented. So very rich in that geographical diversity. And I think if you were to look at other programs, potentially maybe if you're looking at the US, you would see that their programs don't have that strong sort of international diversity as European programs do. Something that I'm really proud of is excitingly, we've hit gender parity this year. This is something that the team have been working on for a few years now. And if you were to look at other MBA programs at other business schools, I think particularly in Europe, it might be a bold statement, but I think for this year, I think we're the only school that has actually been able to hit gender parity. In fact, 51% of our class are female. So it's the first year where females have actually outnumbered the males. And I think it's really important to think about when you're thinking about and when you think about diversity, yes, it can be sliced in a number of ways. You're thinking about it geographically, but also I think thinking about it from a gender lens is really important. I think future employers are looking for candidates who are used to working in diverse environments, and it's important to think about that from a gender lens as well. In terms of average years experience, so we tend to see that's actually crept up this year. We tend to see students come with around 5 to 6 years work experience. That's not the requirement. I'd say the experience can range from anything from sort of 2 years up until I'd say around 13, 14 years. And I will speak about the entry criteria for the programme later on in the presentation. And I would say it's really important to think about when it is the right time for you to embark on an MBA. I think for some it might be 2 years, 2 years experience that they have, or for some it might be later down the line. And then in terms of sectors as well, we have a very sort of broad range of sectors that we see students come into for the MBA. And I believe, no, not the next slide after that will show that. But this slide here just shows in terms of that international diversity, where that comes from. Say that it is fairly spread out. We have seen in terms of North America, we did see a slight sort of drop this year. We tend to, in previous years, we've seen around sort of 24, 25% of our class come from North America. Africa, I think, is something that's important to mention. So we do have an Africa initiative where and we always look to aim to get at least 10% of the class from Africa, which I think if you were to look at other MBA programs, you'll see that their representation is slightly small. There are certain parts of the world where, of course, we would like to sort of have increase that representation, but I'd say that it is sort of fairly spread out. So this slide here shows the makeup of that professional diversity. So as you can see, we tend to see sort of some of those traditional MBA backgrounds, such as finance and consulting. We do see a number of students come from those particular sectors. We've also seen a slight rise in tech. But then in terms of global industry, you can see in terms of this second chart on the right shows where that makeup is. And I think that's really important to think about in terms of that diversity as well, is that professional diversity, that diversity of thought. I'd say half of what you're going to learn on your MBA is actually going to be from your peers. So having that professional diversity where you're able to hear from others who work in different backgrounds, get to hear about particular problems they have within their industries. And I think for a number of candidates, sometimes they think of themselves as a non-traditional background. We certainly don't see that, and we welcome students from all different types of backgrounds. Okay, in terms of the Careers Development Centre, so there is a careers provision that's provided to you throughout your entire year on the MBA. Actually, the support does come early. So generally, the Careers Development Centre do reach out in the summer months before you start the MBA to get you ready and prepared to think about your career goals. So when you do start the programme in September, you can hit the ground running. We do advise to engage with the Careers Development Centre early. It works two ways. You need to put the work and effort into your career goals. They're there to help and assist you and to introduce you to the right people, but it's essentially what it is that you're going to do and ensure you need to take responsibility for your career journey. And this slide shows some of the support that they do provide. In terms of how the team is split into sectors. So we do have a team that is focused on finance, consulting, tech, social impact, and then global industry as well. So they have industry advisors so that you can look to get advice from. They can sort of assist in terms of networks, in terms of alumni connections, but also in terms of support when it comes to maybe thinking about particular electives that you're looking to select based on what your career goals are. And then this is some information. So this is from our most recent employment report, which you can have a look at on the website. It's a really useful report, which has some great information in there. So this is for the class that graduated in 22. So you can see in terms of what percentage of the class look to switch sector, switch location, job function, and then for those who did all three. So actually at the start, I mentioned in terms of that 1-year program, and is it going to be right for you? Is it, if depending on what it is that you're hoping to get out of the program? We certainly have seen candidates look to do all three. So if that's something that you're looking to do, it is possible to do that within the 1-year program. In terms of sort of sectors as well, you can see in terms of where students have gone on to. As mentioned, we are known, we're a school that's known for impact. So we see students go into impact-driven roles, and then in terms of, you still see sort of consulting and finance still being sort of relatively high in terms of what students want to go into, but then also a rise in other sectors as well. We've seen tech rise, and then also in terms of global industry, which combines in many different particular sort of sectors and industries. Okay, and then in terms of geographies then, so this is where students have gone on to post-MBA. So for anyone's dialing in today, if you're looking to make a jump in your location, and if you're looking to come to the UK, then you'll see that more than half of our class did actually come to the UK. And in fact, you would have seen in terms of the statistics that our class is very international. So this isn't UK sort of nationals who are gaining employment in the UK. it is international students. So if you are someone who's looking to make a pivot in your location, then we've seen students successfully do that on the Oxford MBA. And then in terms of sort of other locations, we tend to see North America tends to be sort of second most popular. But I would recommend do have a look at the most recent employment report. In fact, there is a QR code on the screen just now, which which will take you to the most recent report. Okay, so if we speak about colleges, so something that is very unique to Oxford is the collegiate system. So as an MBA student, you are required to become a member of a college. So this is something that's going to be really valuable to your experience. And with your college, you get access to a very diverse academic community, so the opportunity to expand your network even further. So if we think about the wider university, we attract so many students coming from different backgrounds, different subjects. So you could potentially be networking with students who are studying sort of arts, literature, different sciences, and think about some of those fascinating sort of conversations that you're going to have. Colleges do have particular events, so there'll be sort of ceremonies, there'll be college balls, formal dinners. I remember actually speaking to an alumni who, I think she was giving some advice to someone who said that this would be a degree where you need to have at least 4 or 5 ball gowns on the red available. So there will be some of those like college balls, formal dinners. So I suppose if you think about those traditional dining halls with those long narrow tables, I think the best way to describe it is like Harry Potter. I'm guessing we may have some Harry Potter fans dialing in, but and actually some of those colleges were filming locations for the Harry Potter films. But at those formal dinners, you'll be sitting next to someone who is studying something different, and yes, think about some of those interesting discussions that you'll have. You can also look to join a sport or a society with your college, and there are a number of different sports and societies. For example, rowing is something that's very big, very traditional in Oxford, so that's something that you could look to try out. But I would say that if you're someone who if you're interested in something that is very niche, I would say the likelihood of it being available at Oxford is high. In terms of, if I just speak a bit in terms of like the college process as an MBA student, so as for your MBA application, you don't need to sort of put anything about your college, so you don't need to apply for a college at that stage or choose a college. But then if you are successful in securing a place on the program, then you do get to choose a college, and you get the one choice. So if you are successful in securing a place at that college, then great, that's that process over with, it's complete. However, if you don't get your first choice, then I'm afraid there isn't a second choice, and you will be allocated into a college, which I would say it sounds more daunting than it actually is. All of our colleges are unique. They have their own traditions, their own quirks. There is that sense of community being part of your college, sort of a sense of friendly rivalry between some of the colleges as well. And I'd say if you were to speak to students and alumni, they would all vouch that their college is the best. But also in terms of when you get to that stage, we would be happy to have sort of conversations regarding colleges, and there will be support and guidance. Okay, and then if we just touch on the wider Oxford experience, so there is the Oxford Union, so the famous Oxford Union, and as an MBA student, you do get membership. So the Oxford Union does attract some great people. We've had some great speakers there, to former politicians, actors, celebrities. There are, I mentioned the different sort of societies and clubs that you can look to get involved with within the wider university. And then also I want to speak about the MBATs. So the best way to describe the MBATs is mini Olympics for European schools. So it's something that HEC host in Paris each year. And there are traditional sort of sporting events, such as you've got football, basketball, you've got track. They also have some very random activities. I know they've had poker, trivia, Battle of the Bands, dance. And what's really great is Oxford are currently reigning champions. I believe it's the last 5 years now that we have won MBATs in a row. This is a picture of our class that graduated. I think this is our class that graduated in 21. So you can see them there with the trophy, and I think they are actually shouting MBATs. So if you do come to Oxford and you compete in the MBATs, you need to make sure that we win and we keep that winning streak. And also it's a great opportunity to be able to sort of network with other MBAs from other schools. Some of the conversations that I have had with alumni, they've spoken about the MBATs, and it's been sort of one of the highlights that they've had of their year. Okay, so if I get into sort of the detail about the application requirements, and I'll try and go into it as much detail as I can with the time that I have. I do believe that my colleague Hazel is hosting an application tips webinar. I believe it might be next month. In fact, I can check later the date, or if you do go onto our website and go onto our events page, you can find that session and register, where she will go into a bit more detail about the application requirements and also tips for your application. So for anyone who is considering submitting an application. But the first thing that I do want to say is that we look at applications holistically. So not one criteria holds more weight than the other. And we do have guidelines of what we say is competitive in terms of bachelor's degree results, GMATs, GREs, but they aren't hard requirements. And what you can certainly look to do is, if you find that maybe you're slightly lower in one aspect of your profile, is really think about how can you boost that in other areas. You can certainly look to balance your application. So and just as an example, so in fact, if we speak about the undergraduate degree requirement first, so we are looking for a bachelor's degree. We don't have a preference to which subject it is that you take. In terms of like speaking about the diversity that we have on the program, we've seen students study a range of different subjects. In terms of your GPA, we ask for your bachelor's degree to be equivalent to a UK 2.1 or above. So if you're comparing that to the American sort of GPA system, that does work out to a 3.5 or above. And part of your application, you are required to upload your transcripts, and that's your entire transcripts to your application. If you're someone who does have a slightly lower GPA, then that's not a hard requirement. It's not something that should disencourage you from applying. It's really thinking about how can you boost your profile. And actually, one way to do that is to aim for a higher GMAT or GRE. So actually that leads us on nicely to the next requirement. So we do have a GMAT or a GRE requirement. We don't waive that test. So you do need to provide us with a result in your application. We don't have a preference to which test it is that you take. So either GMAT or GRE. The advice that I give to applicants is I would recommend looking into both tests. You may find that one test may play better to your strengths than the other. There are various resources that you can look online. In fact, we do have a GMAT and simulator that you can use as practice. So maybe you might want to do a practice test for both GMAT or GRE, and then decide which one it is that you want to go for, which one it is that you want to study for and prepare. In terms of scores, so if you are considering the GMAT, I would say so 680 is the class median. So and with 680 being the class median, that certainly shows that we've had candidates who have achieved, yes, higher scores, higher than 680, but then we've also had some candidates who have achieved some lower scores as well. I would say 650 or above is considered competitive. And then if you're looking at the GRE, I would say 160 or 161 on both verbal and quant is considered competitive. But again, these aren't hard requirements. I think it's really important with of course, with any test that you're taking, you want to ensure that you're preparing, you want to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward. But then after you've taken the test, and actually you may decide to take the test more than once, that's something that doesn't reflect badly on you. We've certainly seen a number of candidates take the test more than once. But if you're someone who's taken the test a few times and you've achieved a result and actually you're happy with your result and you feel that it does demonstrate your best abilities, and you can think about how to demonstrate other strengths in your application, then by all means I'd recommend submitting that score. But yes, I'd say a score of anything sort of for the GMAT 650 or above is considered competitive. In terms of professional experience, so we ask for at least 2 years postgraduate work experience. I think in that class profile slide, we did see that in terms of the average years of experience, we see students for this year, it was 6 years, but that is just an average. I'd say the experience can range from anything from sort of 2 years up until, I would say, maybe sort of 13, 14 years. If you're someone who has anything higher than sort of 14 years of experience, then we advise that you may wish to consider the executive MBA. I'd say it's just really thinking about the classroom and who you're going to be with in your cohort, and are you someone who might have a better experience in an executive MBA class, which with candidates who have more sort of more years of experience. In terms of your experience, so the admissions committee, when assessing your work experience, we're going to be looking at career progression, so see how you've progressed in your career, thinking about your leadership potential. We want to see that you have real hands-on experience that you're able to draw upon in the classroom and that you're able to share with your cohort. And as part of your application, we do ask for a one-page CV. References are important, so we ask for at least 2 references. We advise that they can be professional or academic, though if you're someone who's been out of academia for some time, then you may wish to choose 2 professional references. My advice would be is to select people that know you well, who are able to comment on your strengths and on your abilities, who are going to be an advocate for you in your application, because you can, and in fact you should be quite strategic when it comes to selecting your referees. A popular question that we do get asked is let's say, for example, if you were to ask your CEO or a particular senior manager within your organization to write a reference for you, is that going to hold more weight? Well, if that person doesn't know you well and isn't able to comment on your strengths, on your abilities, if they're not able to give the admissions committee examples of who it is that you are, then no, that's not going to hold more weight. Think about the relationship that you have with your referee as opposed to the title. And for your referees, for your references, we ask that you add professional contact details onto your application, and they will receive a link to complete a reference for you. And then I'll skip past the online assessment just for a moment if I just go on to the supporting statement. So in terms of, there is an essay question that we ask you to complete. It's a very open question. The question is there anything that you would like to make the admissions committee aware of that's not been captured in your application? So this is a great opportunity for you to say anything that you would like to. So there's no real right or wrong here. So some examples could be to address an achievement that you've had within your professional experience, your academic experience. In fact, it might be a personal experience. You may find that the application is very professionally focused, and you may wish to use that space to tell us something about you, about a hobby that you have, a passion, an interest. We've seen some candidates use it to address if they feel they have a shortcoming in their profile. So as an example, if they do have a lower bachelor's degree or a lower GMAT GRE score, and there's some particular reasons behind that, they've used the supporting statement to address that. Entirely up to you what you use that space for. There is a word limit on there, which is 250 words. So quite a tight space actually when you think about it, but still a great opportunity for you to say anything that you'd like to. And then also there is the post-MBA career plan as well that forms part of your application, which is a vital part. So there are some questions in that post-MBA plan, which is just asking about what it is that you want to do post-MBA. And in fact, those questions are designed to be quite reflective. So depending on what it is that you're looking to do, so if you're someone who is either looking to go into employment, or if you're someone who's looking to go into entrepreneurship, or we do see a number of our students who are being sponsored. So if you're looking to return back to your employer, those series of questions are designed to really get you thinking, and we're looking at what it is that you want to do post MBA. How is the Oxford MBA going to help you achieve your goals? What preparation is it that you're going to do, or that you're starting to do? How is the professional experiences that you already have, how is that something that you're able to successfully build upon? I'd say it's really for you to convince us about your career goals. And by all means, we're not going to hold you to your career plans. We understand that things may change as you get onto the programme. But I'd say that you do need to know yourself quite well within that 1-year programme. And then in terms of the English language proficiency, so if you are a national of a non-English speaking country, then you do need to demonstrate your proficiency in your application. We do offer some waivers. So we do offer an academic waiver, which to be eligible for the academic waiver, you need to have completed your studies, your bachelor's degree, or maybe it might be an additional master's degree that you've studied. That needs to be completed no more than 2 years to the start date that you're applying to. And sorry, that bachelor's degree needs to have been studied using English. So on your transcripts, it needs to state that the median use was in English. So if that is applicable to you, then you can use that as an academic waiver. I would expect that with it, so there has been some slight changes to that over the last couple of years with that date where it needs to have been completed no more than 2 years to the course that you're applying to. So within the professional sort of requirements, the work experience requirements that we do have for the MBA, do understand that there may be some of you who are not actually applicable for that academic waiver. We do also offer professional waivers. So if you're someone who works using English language, so if your day-to-day life is conducted in English, then you can apply for a professional waiver. And in order to do that, you need to provide us with a statement, and that's a statement from you just outlining your experience of using English. So I suppose if you think about the components that make up an English language test, so speaking, writing, reading and listening, if you just provide the admissions committee with some examples of how it is that you use English in your day-to-day life, and then in your professional capacity, then the admissions committee can consider you for a professional waiver. If both of those don't apply, then you will need to provide us with an English language test result. So we do accept IELTS and TOEFL, and I'm not going to go into in terms of the scores that we have. We do have minimum scores and overall scores that you need to achieve, and I would recommend going on to the FAQ page on our website where you can view some of those details of that. And in fact, we can provide a link in the chat for you to view that. And then if I just go back to the online assessment, so when you do submit your application, we do have an online assessment that you would need to complete. It comprises of 4 questions, 3 video questions and 1 written question. It's a great opportunity for you to bring some life into your application, and we're able to see how you're going to react to some timed questions. The first 2 questions are the same for everyone, motivational questions about why it is that you want to consider an MBA and why the Oxford MBA. And then the third question will be randomly selected. It will be competency based. There is the opportunity to practice, so you don't need to go in and do the live assessment straight away. There are some practice sessions that you can do where you can get used to the platform, getting used to being on camera, watching yourself, hearing yourself back, and those practice answers that you do record will just be for you, so no one else in the admissions committee will get to view those. But when it comes to the live assessment, you only get that 1 take. Okay, and then in terms of application stage deadlines, so your application needs to be complete by one of these deadlines in order to be considered for the MBA. So everything in the previous slide needs to be submitted for the admissions committee to be able to consider you for the MBA. So applications are open for 2024. And we have 2 stage deadlines remaining in the cycle now. So stage 1, so it is shaded out, it has passed. It was on the 27th of September. And actually, we did release interview decisions on Wednesday. So we're going to be interviewing, we're going to spend in the next few weeks interviewing stage 1 candidates. But we have 2 left in the cycle. So we have stage 2, which is on the 5th of January, and then stage 3 on the 20th of March. A popular question that we do get asked is, are there benefits of applying early? So, and what are the differences between stages? So I would say there's not much difference between stages 1 and 2. So if you're still aiming for stage 2 is a great it's still a great approach to get your application in. We do receive a high volume of applications in stage 2, as it does coincide with a university-wide scholarship deadline. So having said that, when it comes to stage 3, there have been times where we have operated on a wait list. But having said that, I would say it's really important to apply when you're ready and when you feel your application is at its best. Don't force your application in early if it's not ready. If that strong application comes from you in stage 3, then submit in stage 3. There certainly are places available. It just comes with that caveat that it does just get competitive as we move through the stages and as places do get filled. Okay, I'm just going to go through the slides. I know that we're running out of time, so we do want to get to your questions. So in terms of funding, it's funding the program is really important, and we encourage you to think about that now. We do have a number of scholarships that you can be considered for and that you can apply to. A majority of our scholarships are merit-based, so the committee will be looking at the strength of your application. And you can view sort of further information about scholarships on our website. We do see a number of students who are being sponsored by their company. So that's something that you potentially might look to explore. And then there are other sort of loans and external providers. So in terms of sort of prodigy finance. But I can pop a link in the chat to some of the funding pages that we have. And then just to end with, I'll just leave this quote from our dean with you. And it just in terms of spoke about the emphasis that we do have on impact and that intersection between business and society. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. And what I'll do is I will switch my camera on, and also I'll invite Elena to come back and to switch our camera on as well. Thank you for the questions. I can see that Elena's been answering quite a lot of those. So we've got around 10 minutes, so we'll try and sort of get to as many questions as we can. So I'm just going to have a look just through. Okay, right, I'll take this question. So this is a great question about the OBN. So yes, so we do have Oxford. So OBNs, for those who don't know, they stand for Oxford Business Network. So they are student-led networks that you can look to get involved with. And so yes, as a student, you can look to be part of the OBNs. You could actually look to be part of the committee. I know that the at the start of the year, you're able to sort of put a pitch in to whether you want to sort of be part of that committee. And in terms of the participation, like what's the expected time commitment, I would say it really varies. It's not something like some of the particular co-curriculars that we have, which some of them do have a very sort of a particular sort of time commitment that you do need to make. I believe with the OBNs, that's entirely up to you in terms of what it is that you look to do for that year with the OBN. Are you looking to get particular speakers in? But you certainly can look to participate that as being part of the Oxford MBA programme. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes, there was a question that I'm trying to find. Oh yeah, about a copy of the presentation. So you will see a recording on our YouTube channel, or the school's YouTube channel, hopefully soon. So you'll be able to watch that from the beginning in case you haven't been able to join us from the beginning of the presentation, from the beginning of the webinar. Yeah, so we will have a recording available.
Great, thank you, Elena. So we have a question about assessment methods used in the MBA program and provide information on when assessments are typically scheduled. Yes, good question. So I'd say there are a variation of different assessment methods. There'll be group work, group assignments, individual assignments. There will be exams. They tend to be sort of, I would say sort of fairly spread out throughout the year. So actually I believe last week was an assessment week. I did bump into some students and I know that they were sort of very hectically working on doing some presentations and doing some group assessments. And then I know then towards the end of Michaelmas term, I believe it's the final week, that's also an assessment week as well, where I think there may be an exam. So they are sort of spread out sort of throughout the year in terms of, I suppose, when you're working on in the terms as well. So if you think about it, particularly with the first term in terms of Michaelmas, where you're working on your core courses, I expect you'll find there'll be those 2 weeks that you've got assessment sort of in the middle and then towards the end. And then in terms of the elective modules that you do select, I suppose it will depend on what those particular assessment methods are. In terms of sort of teaching methods as well, I'll just touch on that as well. I'd say it's also very broad in terms of the teaching methods as well. There is lecture-based, there'll be case studies, there'll be group work, there'll be simulations, so a very sort of broad range as well.
Thanks, Mandeep. There was a question around the work experience. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. The questions keep jumping. Yes, any specific areas that we should focus upon when displaying our previous project and work experience, and what is the admissions committee looking at from the work experience of a candidate? So the admissions committee won't expect you to have certain work experience from a particular sector or industry. So we have a wide variety of industries and sectors that our students used to work in, from nonprofit to media to consulting, finance. So you can see, I think Mandeep also mentioned in the presentation that you can see all those details in the employment report. That's a very useful document that highlights all of that information. So the admissions committee just expects to see progression in your career. If you, for example, have managed budgets, or you've had some people in your that you've managed, so definitely it's something that they are going to take into consideration, but they're not looking for a particular sector or industry. Maybe something useful for you to have a look at would be the CV template that we have on our website. You may use that as a reference, and that has some tips and tricks for you to use when putting together your CV. But you don't necessarily have to use that. It's just a template for you to have a look at in case that might be of interest. You will find that on our website, and I can leave a link here for you in case you would like to have a look.
Great, thanks, Elena. So I'm just trying to see if I can answer as many questions as we can in the time that we have. So I saw that there was a question from Scarlett about the entrepreneurship project. So I mentioned that students have used to test out an idea that they had. Can I elaborate more on that? In the past, have students used the project to kickstart their own? Yeah, so actually we've certainly seen students, so because we do get a number of candidates who are interested in entrepreneurship, so they have used that entrepreneurship project to test out an idea. We actually have seen, in fact, I think it was for they graduated in 21. It was two students. In fact, I'd recommend having a look on the website. There may be some information about them. There may be something from the entrepreneurship forum, but two students, Joe and Jasmine, for the entrepreneurship project, they had an idea, and then they decided to actually launch their startup, which is called Luna, which is it's an app which is designed for teens in terms of thinking about sort of puberty, and they have sort of medical advice on there, and some real sort of it's a really sort of great startup that they have. So yes, we've certainly seen candidates being able to use that entrepreneurship project and leverage the entrepreneurship resources that you do have. You've got the Entrepreneurship Centre here that hosts a number of different workshops that you can look to get involved with. And question from Ruben, is there a percentage of class that, is there a usual percentage of the class that are veterans, or does it vary from year to year? I'd say it certainly varies from year to year. We do certainly have candidates who are veterans. We do actually have a veterans club, so you could look to get in contact with them if you wanted to sort of get any advice. We can, in fact, Ruben, I can get that link and I can post that in the chat for you. And then also, I'll just take this question quickly as well. How many days in advance of the deadline for each stage is the application form open? I think that's what the question is asking. Applications are open now, so you don't necessarily need to wait for that particular stage deadline as well. So if you're ready to go ahead and start working on your application, and in fact, even if you're someone who's aiming for, let's say, if you're looking to apply for round 3, you can still look to work on that application and submit when you're ready.
Thank you. There was a question around the application fee waiver. Is there an application fee waiver? So if you are currently a resident in a country on the World Bank list of low-income countries, then you would be able to apply for an application fee waiver. What you would need to do is just indicate that in your application form. You just need to select the application fee waiver option, and the list with the countries that are on the World Bank's list. You can find that on our website in the FAQ section. There was another question I wanted to take about the GMAT. Gabriela's question: if I take an additional GMAT test after the deadline and achieve a higher score, will it be considered? So if you submit an application with a certain GMAT score and you retake your test and you achieve a higher score, you are more than welcome to send your revised score to us. However, that needs to be before the interview decisions are made in order for the admissions committee to take it into consideration. I hope this is what you wanted to find out. There was another question around GMAT, I believe. Oh yes, you mentioned that GRE and GMAT can be shifted before the interview. What is the interview timeline? So you will be able to see, and I'll send you a link actually in the chat, with the deadlines in terms of when the interview decisions are released for every stage. So now the stage 1 deadline has passed. The interview decisions have been released on Wednesday, but for stage 2 deadline and stage 3, you'll be able to find those dates on our website. But I will respond to your question now with that link.
Great, thank you, Alana. Okay, so we just have a couple of minutes, so I'm just gonna, let's have a look, see. I think some of these questions have been answered. Okay, there's a question about the Laidlaw Scholarship, and in terms of if it mainly just considers founders or people who are working in the NGO, just asking because I saw almost all of the scholars of this scholarship have a similar profile. So no, actually, in terms of the Laidlaw Scholarship, yes, it is a fantastic sort of scholarship opportunity, which it offers. So it's a scholarship aimed at women. We are hosting a Laidlaw Scholarship webinar in December. So if you're interested in the Laidlaw Scholarship and you're considering applying to it, then I'd recommend dialing in for that webinar where you'll get to hear from some of our Laidlaw scholars as well. No, so in terms of the requirements for the Laidlaw Scholarship, it is aimed at females, and it is aimed for females who have been, where you're able to demonstrate that you've been doing particular space in terms of thinking about working on that piece in terms of thinking about women in business. Like, are you someone who is an advocate for gender initiatives? How are you able to demonstrate that in your application? No, it certainly doesn't need to be working in in a startup or a co-founder. We've seen some of our scholars who have worked within particular within industries as well. So no, I hope that answers that question, but I'd recommend dialing in to the Laidlaw webinar and share the link. So actually what I will do, I'm going to, and I have shared some links in the chat. So I spoke about the Veterans Club, so I've shared the link to that, and I've also shared a link to the FAQs as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share a link to our events page where you can view some of the events that we have. So I believe I mentioned an application tips webinar that my colleague Hazel is hosting. So you'll be able to view that, and you'll also be able to view details of the Laidlaw scholarships as well. So sadly, we are out of time. Apologies that we've not got to all of your questions, but you can contact us. I can see that Elena has put our contact details. And as mentioned, the session will be recorded, so we will follow up with the slides. But I do hope that you found that useful. And any questions, please do get in touch. We're here to help and assist. And but for those of you who are working on your applications, I expect there are many of you that are looking to aim and to submit for our stage 2 deadline, which falls on the 5th of January. Best of luck as you start working on your applications. And thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.